packed courtroom, a gavel slamming down and a row of officers smirking in the back. It was all a show, but nobody in that room knew just how much they were about to lose. Power shifts in the blink of an eye, and the ones who think they've won are often the least prepared for what happens next. Let us know in the comments section below, have you ever seen someone get exactly what they deserve when they least expected it? The grip on Alicia Monroe's wrist was tight, too tight. She didn't flinch, didn't resist, but the officer behind her still twisted the cuffs as though she were a threat. "Keep your mouth shut," he muttered, pressing his knee into her back as he forced her into the patrol car. Alicia breathed through the pain, eyes forward. She could already see where this was going. Another headline, another scandal, another name they'd tried to bury. The university campus blurred as the car sped away, past the crowd of students still frozen in shock. A black woman, an esteemed guest lecturer, arrested mid-sentence. There was no way they weren't recording. Phones were out, cameras flashing, the murmurs thick with confusion. But Alicia knew the game. The more they controlled the narrative, the less the truth mattered. The officer in the driver's seat, a stocky man with a shaved head, kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror. His partner in the passenger seat chuckled under his breath. "Crazy how easy it is, huh?" the bald officer said. His partner shook his head. "Barely had to try. Some of them just make it too easy." Alicia turned her head slightly. What exactly was easy? Baldy grinned. "Come on now. You were holding." "Was I?" He pulled a small plastic bag from his vest pocket, holding it up between two fingers. White powder, sealed, caught red-handed. Alicia looked at the bag, then at him, slow, calculated, like a teacher waiting for a student to realize they'd just made a mistake on a test they were so sure they'd aced. "Funny," she said, "that wasn't in my hands a minute ago." Baldy's grin widened. "You sure about that?" She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The city skyline rose outside the window, streetlights flashing past in rapid succession. The police station wasn't far, but Alicia already knew she wouldn't be there long. Because here's the thing about men like this. They never do their homework. The car rolled to a stop at the precinct. Alicia was dragged out, boots scraping against the pavement, but her face remained unreadable. She'd been through worse. Inside, the officers processed her like any other criminal. The mugshot, the fingerprints, the questions. "Name?" She tilted her head. "You didn't check my ID." The officer behind the desk snorted. "You'll be in the system soon enough." Alicia watched as he typed something into the computer. A second later, his face dropped. The smirk vanished. His shoulders stiffened. His eyes flicked up to hers, confusion slipping into something that almost resembled fear. Give me a second," he muttered, pushing back from his desk. The other officers had noticed. Baldy frowned, stepping closer to the screen. "What's the holdup?" The man at the desk swallowed. I think we need the captain." Baldy's brows furrowed. "For what?" Before he could answer, a door swung open. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp uniform stepped out, eyes locked onto Alicia the second he entered the room. She didn't break his gaze. He exhaled sharply. "Oh, hell." The other officers stiffened. The ones who had been laughing, making jokes, acting like this was just another easy bust, all of them fell silent. Alicia raised a single brow. "Problem, Captain?" Silence. Baldy shifted uncomfortably. "Wait, what's going on?" The captain ignored him, stepping closer, eyes flicking over the screen before landing back on Alicia. "I'm gonna need to make a call," he muttered. Alicia let a slow, knowing smile tug at the corner of her lips. "Yeah," she said, "you do that." For the first time since they threw those cuffs on her, the room felt different. The officers who had been so smug, so certain, now their certainty was cracking. And Alicia Monroe? She was just getting started. The walls of the holding cell were cold, the air stale with the scent of sweat and regret. Alicia sat on the metal bench, her posture loose, casual even, like she was waiting for a delayed flight rather than being locked up in a cage. The other women in the cell gave her a glance, then returned to their own thoughts. None of them spoke. This was just another step in the game. A heavy clang echoed as the cell door opened. "Monroe," barked the officer, "you've got a visitor." She didn't react immediately, didn't make it easy for them by jumping to her feet. Instead, she took a slow breath, rolled her shoulders, and only then did she rise. The officer wasn't one of the men who arrested her. He was younger, fresh-faced, with just a hint of unease in his stance. The kind of guy who'd joined the force thinking he'd be making a difference. Alicia had seen his type before. Eventually, they either hardened or left. He led her down a narrow corridor, the buzz of fluorescent lights humming overhead. The precinct wasn't particularly large, just another cog in the machine of a system that had been running on corruption for decades. They stopped in front of a small room, the one with a single steel table and 2 chairs. Alicia's hands were still cuffed, but she didn't complain when the officer guided her inside. Seated at the table was a man in a wrinkled suit, his tie loosened just enough to suggest he wanted to appear casual. He wasn't. His face was lined with the weight of too many cases, too many people shuffled in and out like it didn't matter. Her so-called lawyer. "Ms. Monroe," he greeted, nodding. "My name's David Keller. I've been assigned to your case." Alicia sat down opposite him. She didn't smile. Keller glanced at the officer, waiting for him to step out, but the man just crossed his arms. "She's cuffed," he pointed out. Keller sighed. "I'd still prefer to speak with my client alone." The officer didn't move immediately, but after a tense pause, he exhaled sharply and stepped out, shutting the door behind him. Keller rubbed his hands together as if gathering his thoughts. "All right," he began. "First things first. The charges, they planted it." The words were calm but firm. Keller blinked. "Excuse me?" "The drugs, they planted them." Keller's mouth pressed into a thin line. "Ms. Monroe, I understand this is a stressful situation, but—" "I'm not stressing," she interrupted. "I'm informing you." Keller sighed, rubbing his temple. "Look, I'm not here to judge. My job is to get you the best possible outcome. Now, if we're talking strategy, taking a plea deal might be in your best interest." Alicia tilted her head. "And what exactly am I pleading to?" Keller hesitated. "Possession with intent to distribute." She laughed, short, sharp. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "Tell me," she said, leaning forward, "do I look like a dealer to you?" Keller didn't answer. Alicia sat back. "No, I didn't think so." Keller sighed again, his patience thinning. "I'm trying to help you." "No," she corrected. "You're trying to move my case along as quickly as possible so you don't have to waste time on it." That struck a nerve. His jaw tightened. "Ms. Monroe, if this goes to trial, you could be looking at serious time. And if it does," she said, "I'll walk out free." Keller frowned. "You sound very sure of yourself." She met his gaze. "I am." Silence stretched between them. Keller leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not just a university guest, are you?" Alicia didn't blink. "What do you think?" Keller exhaled, shaking his head. "All right, no plea deal. But that means we fight this." A slow smirk tugged at her lips. "Good," she said. "Now let's talk about how we're going to take them down." Hours passed, and the energy in the precinct shifted. Alicia was back in the holding cell, but now there was tension in the air. Officers passed glances at each other. Conversations were hushed. Something had changed, and Alicia could see it in the way their shoulders squared just a little too stiffly. They were nervous. The door buzzed open again. "Monroe." She pushed to her feet. This time the officer didn't grab her roughly. He didn't need to. She walked with him willingly, her posture relaxed, head held high. They led her down a different hallway this time, past rows of desks cluttered with paperwork and half-empty coffee cups. At the far end, standing beside the captain's office, was Baldy, the same officer who had planted the drugs. His face had lost its earlier smugness. She smiled. The captain's office was larger than the interrogation room, but somehow felt smaller, cramped, the walls lined with filing cabinets and a large oak desk at the center. Behind it sat Captain Robert Vance, a man with graying temples and a permanent scowl. She didn't sit, neither did he. "Alicia Monroe," he said slowly. She met his gaze. He let out a breath, shaking his head. "You're a pain in my ass, you know that?" She smiled. "Only when people make bad choices." Vance stared at her for a long moment, then reached into his desk drawer. She didn't move as he pulled out a single folder, thick, lined with documents. He tossed it onto the desk in front of her. "Your file." Elise's brow arched. "Fast." Vance exhaled sharply. "Who the hell are you, Monroe?" She lifted a shoulder. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?" Vance's jaw clenched. "We checked your ID, checked your history. You don't exist." Silence. Then Alicia chuckled, shaking her head. "Oh, Captain," she murmured, "you really should have done your homework first." The tension in the room thickened. She leaned forward, hands still cuffed, and lowered her voice just slightly. "Because by the time you figure it out," she said, "it'll already be too late." Vance didn't move, didn't speak. Because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't just some professor. This wasn't just some woman they could bury under false charges. They had arrested the wrong person. And now they were in a hell of a lot of trouble. The precinct was no longer a place of order. It was a place of whispers. The usual sounds of ringing phones and clacking keyboards were drowned out by something heavier. Unease. Alicia Monroe stood in the captain's office, her wrists still cuffed, but the balance of power had already begun to shift. Captain Robert Vance sat behind his desk, eyes flicking between her and the thick file in front of him. The weight of what he had just discovered pressed into his shoulders. "You're not just some professor," he muttered. Alicia gave him a small smile, slow and knowing. "I never said I was." Vance exhaled, fingers tapping against the edge of his desk. He knew. The moment her name had been cross-hacked through the right databases, the moment he saw what was buried under layers of clearance levels far beyond his reach, it had all fallen apart. But there were others in the department who didn't know yet. Others who still thought this was a routine arrest, another easy case that would disappear into the system. The officers who had planted the evidence, who had thrown her in cuffs, who had smirked at her like she was just another statistic. They still believed they had won. Vance lifted the file and slammed it shut, leaning forward. "Your FBI." Alicia didn't answer. She didn't have to. His voice dropped. "How high up?" She tilted her head slightly. "You tell me." Vance hesitated, but only for a second. "Director." The word barely left his lips, but it was enough to make the walls of the precinct seem smaller, the air heavier. Alicia Monroe, the woman sitting across from him in cuffs, wasn't just another agent. She was the one who gave the orders. She was the one they had arrested. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. Jesus Christ. Outside the office, the sound of laughter carried from the break room. The officers who had orchestrated the entire thing were celebrating. They had no idea what was coming. Vance swallowed hard. This is bad. Alicia's brow lifted. For who? His silence was answer enough. She sat back, giving him space to process. Vance wasn't a fool. He had been in this job long enough to know when a situation had gone past the point of no return. And this? This was career-ending. "Tell me something," Alicia said, her voice light, conversational. Did you know? Vance's eyes snapped to hers. Did I know what? That your officers were dirty. His jaw tightened. I run a clean department. She gave a soft hum, gaze flicking toward the office window. Through the glass she could see the men who had arrested her, laughing, patting each other on the back like they had just won some kind of prize. She turned back to Vance. No, she said. You don't. He bristled. You don't know anything about my precinct. I know that 2 of your officers planted drugs on a federal official. Vance flinched. I know that the prosecutor has already drafted a charge sheet. His silence stretched. And I know, she continued, voice dropping just slightly, that if I don't walk out of here in the next 5 minutes, I'm making a phone call that's going to bring down your entire department. Vance's hands curled into fists on the desk. The weight of the situation had fully settled onto him now. If this got out, if Washington got word of what had happened, his career wouldn't just be over. It would be obliterated. His officers, his precinct, his badge. Everything would burn. Alicia watched the realization hit him like a slow-moving train. Then, finally, he moved. With a reluctant breath, he pulled a key from his belt and unlocked her cuffs. The moment the metal clicked open, Alicia rubbed her wrists, exhaling softly, not in relief, because she had never been worried, but in quiet satisfaction. She stood. Vance remained seated, watching her like a man who had just witnessed the ground split open beneath his feet. I suggest, Alicia said smoothly, that you call those officers in before I do. Vance didn't argue. He was already reaching for the intercom. The announcement came seconds later, echoing through the precinct. Officers Dunlap and Torres, report to my office immediately. The laughter in the break room stopped. Alicia didn't wait. She stepped out of the office, past Vance's desk, and into the main precinct floor. All eyes turned to her. She didn't speak. Didn't need to. The officers who had arrested her, Dunlap, the bald one, and Torres, his grinning partner, walked toward the office, their confidence still intact, still believing they had the upper hand. Then they saw her standing there, free of cuffs, and their faces changed. Torres slowed. Dunlap's smirk faltered. Alicia's expression remained neutral as they passed her, but as they stepped into the captain's office, she turned just slightly. Enjoy it, she murmured. Dunlap hesitated. Enjoy what? She met his gaze, her eyes dark and unwavering. The last 5 minutes before your career ends. Dunlap's mouth opened, but before he could respond, Vance's voice barked out from the office. Shut the door. It slammed shut behind them. Alicia turned back to the precinct floor, scanning the room. Other officers avoided her gaze. Some whispered, some simply stared, confusion and unease settling over them like a fog. Then, from the far end of the room, a voice called out. Director Monroe? The room froze. Alicia glanced over her shoulder. A man stood in the entrance of the precinct, dressed in a dark suit, his posture straight, professional. A federal agent. He held up his badge. Ma'am, we're here to take you home. A slow smile touched Alicia's lips. She nodded once, stepped forward, and walked out of the precinct. Behind her, the walls of corruption were already crumbling. The ride to the federal building was silent, the weight of the last few hours pressing into the space between Alicia and the agent sitting beside her. The city lights blurred past, neon streaks against the tinted windows of the black SUV. She flexed her wrists, still feeling the phantom weight of the cuffs. You good, Director? The agent driving finally asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Alicia didn't answer right away. Her fingers tapped lightly against her knee, the only sign of the calculations running through her mind. I will be, she murmured. The car pulled into an underground garage, security personnel already waiting. The moment she stepped out, agents stood at attention. Some looked relieved, others furious. None of them asked what had happened. They already knew. A man in a tailored navy suit stepped forward, his expression tight but controlled. "Director Monroe," he said. "The Attorney General is waiting for you." She nodded and walked past him, taking the private elevator up to the top floor. The door slid open, revealing an expansive conference room lined with glass windows overlooking the city. Seated at the long mahogany table was the Attorney General, an older man with graying hair and tired eyes, and beside him a woman in a sleek black suit. Head of Internal Affairs. Neither looked pleased. Alicia walked in, slow and deliberate, and took the empty seat across from them. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, finally, the Attorney General exhaled sharply, placing his hands on the table. "You've caused quite a mess, Director." Alicia met his gaze, unflinching. "No," she corrected. "I exposed one." The woman beside him, Internal Affairs, leaned forward, clasping her hands together. "The officers who arrested you are already in holding," she said. "Their captain tried to shield them, but after seeing your file, he folded. They've admitted to planting evidence, taking bribes, coercing witnesses. The entire precinct is under investigation." Alicia allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. "And the prosecutor?" she asked. The Attorney General exchanged a glance with Internal Affairs. "Suspended pending review," the woman answered. "He was eager to fast-track your case. Too eager. Turns out he's had a history of winning suspiciously high-profile convictions." Alicia leaned back in her chair. The pieces had fallen into place faster than she expected. It was one thing to go after street-level corruption. It was another to uncover a pattern, a network, a machine designed to funnel people into a system built to break them. "This won't be the last time this happens," she said. The Attorney General sighed. "No, it won't." His eyes met hers, studying her carefully. "You understand the gravity of what you did?" he asked. Alicia tilted her head. "Clarify." "You just turned a local incident into a federal scandal. The media will pick this up. The public will demand accountability. This isn't going away quietly." Alicia smiled, slow and sharp. "Good." The Attorney General pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling. "You realize the kind of enemies you're making, right?" Alicia's expression didn't change. "If they're my enemies," she said, "they were never the right people to begin with." Silence stretched between them. Then, finally, Internal Affairs sat back, nodding slightly. "Your move, Director." Alicia inhaled deeply, feeling the tension in her body settle. "My move," she repeated. She pushed her chair back and stood, adjusting the cuffs of her blazer. "Get the press ready." Both the Attorney General and Internal Affairs frowned. "You're going public?" Alicia gave a small, knowing smile. "I was arrested in broad daylight," she said. "Cameras were already rolling before they put me in the car. The world is waiting for an answer." The Attorney General hesitated, but he knew she was right. The story had already escaped containment. The only way forward was through. Alicia turned toward the window, looking out over the city. It looked different now. Not broken, just in need of a reckoning. Hours later, Alicia stood at a podium, a row of microphones in front of her. The room was packed. Reporters, cameras, flashing lights, the air was thick with anticipation. She adjusted the mic. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady, carrying through the room. "As many of you know, I was unlawfully arrested yesterday." The murmurs rippled through the crowd, but she continued. "The officers responsible have been taken into custody. An investigation into systemic corruption within the precinct is already underway. But let's be clear. This isn't just about one case. This is about a pattern that has existed for far too long." The murmurs grew louder. Cameras zoomed in. Every day, innocent people, disproportionately black and brown, are funneled into a system designed to work against them, not because they've committed a crime, but because corruption thrives when no one is watching. A pause. She let the weight of her words settle. "Well, I'm watching." A hush fell over the crowd. "I may be director of the FBI," she said, "but this isn't just my fight, this is our fight. And it's time we stop treating justice like it belongs to the privileged few." Alicia looked directly into the cameras. "This ends now." The room erupted into questions, voices overlapping, but Alicia stepped back from the mic, walking off the stage as agents flanked her on both sides. Her job wasn't done. It was just beginning.